So welcome to this latest video on 162 Maths, and in this video we'll be going over some GCSE Maths exam questions related to expanding and simplifying. Now a copy of the questions that we go through in this video are available for you to download by clicking on the link in the description, and I'll also include some more in-depth lessons covering this particular topic in more detail than what we go through in this video. Now before going through the exam questions, I'll also give you a quick overview over what it is you need to know and what other topics that this topic can be linked with in the GCSE Maths syllabus. Now before we get started working through some past exam questions, let's just have a quick overview over what you need to know and other topics that expanding and simplifying brackets comes into play. Now in terms of what you need to know the basics. Obviously it's quite self-explanatory, this topic. It's actually quite a nice topic to start your revision on, particularly to get into grips with algebra. Now, you need to be able to factorize fully expressions, and that's basically into single brackets. Now, although sometimes this can get merged in with quadratics because you see squares, etc., but it's really important that only do you factorize the algebraic term, but also the numerical terms as well. Now, you also need to be able to expand and simplify brackets. Now, most common students use loops or a grid, but it's really important that you develop a technique that stops you from making silly mistakes. Typically, most mistakes that are made on these questions are students doing these questions mentally, going straight to the answer without having a formal method. Now, if you get them right, that's absolutely fine to do, but if you get it wrong, it can be wasted marks. So I would always recommend do your best. If you prefer doing it mentally, do it mentally, but if you have time at the end, go back and add that working out of using loops, doing the question again, or maybe using a grid. And again, if you're wanting any help on any of these particular aspects, then I'll include some links on some lessons that go over these in more detail. Now the more important one, probably the more typical one on the higher GCSE, is going to be factorising and working with quadratics. Now this is going to be where you are factorising, where you've got a single coefficient of x squared, so in other words just one x squared. One's where you've got multiple x squareds, which I like to call more advanced quadratic factorising. You're also looking at difference of two squares, also known as dots, so know and be recognising where you see those, and also completing the square, which I'll be honest is only really used when it says or it's giving you the format of completing the square. So for example, if it says completing the square, or it mentions x plus a squared plus b, something along those lines, but that would always imply that you're using completing the square, and that should really be the only time that you factorize using completing the square, is when it mentions it. Now, with this particular topic, it can appear both on the non and the calculator papers, so don't automatically think that because you're not using a calculator for these questions that it won't come up on a calculator paper. So again, try not to get too complacent. Now, with this particular topic, there are links in other topics as well, more notably more the algebraic topics, but it can be merged in with a lot of the other topics in geometry and measure, potentially probability with probability equations, could get merged in with number, we're looking at area and perimeter, etc. So the key ones I've particularly identified are going to be identities, where you're comparing coefficients once you've expanded the brackets, algebraic fractions, area and perimeter problems, algebraic proof, and quadratics. Now obviously that is not an exclusive list. There are going to be many other topics, and I'm sure that when you've gone through some past papers or practice with your teacher and in class, you may have discovered that this topic does merge in with a lot of different areas of mathematics. So without further ado, let's get started on some questions. Now a little reminder, if you're wanting a copy of these questions, then all you need to do is just simply click on the link in the description. I will try and go slowly when reading out the questions, so if you want to, if you haven't got access to a printer or feel the need to print it off, then all you need to do is just simply pause the video, have a attempt, unpause as we go through the answer. Also, again, a little reminder, I'll also include links to lessons which go over these particular topics in more detail. So if you feel that I'm going a bit rushed in certain questions, or a question doesn't quite make sense, I strongly recommend you check out the lessons. So looking at question 1, it says expand 5x squared, and then we've got 2x plus 3 inside the bracket. So here, what you've got to do is multiply numbers with numbers, letters with letters. And where you've got the same letter, you then want to use powers. So here we've got 5 times 2, which is 10. And then we've got x squared times x, so that gives us 3x's, so it's going to be x cubed. I then go on to 5x squared times 3, so 5 times 3 is 15. and then I've just got an x squared, so it's going to be, the final answer is going to be 10x cubed plus 15x squared. Moving on to question 2, it says factorise 6x minus 9. So again, what I want to do is factorise, well, there's only one thing I can take out from a 6 and a 9, because they're the two things that the two terms have got in common. Now remember that when you are factorising, every term has to have that common factor. If there isn't a common factor, you can't factorise it. So here we've got 6 and 9, a number and a number. So the biggest number that goes in 6 and 9 is going to be 3. So then what times 3 gives you 6x? Well, I need 2x. And what times 3 gives you 9? And that's going to be another 3. And there we go. Now to make sure you factorise fully, a good tip is just look at the bracket and see if the terms inside the bracket have got anything in common, or that there is a common factor in the numbers. Next one, for question 3, it says expand 11x, and then we've got 4x minus 5y inside the bracket. So here 11 times 4 is 44, and x times x is x squared. Then we've got 11 times 5, which is 55, and xy, can't merge those together, so we just write them together, and I've got a minus in between those. Question 4, it says expand and simplify m minus 5 squared. So again, recognizing that this is a double bracket question. Again, with these questions, particularly in exam situation, exam stress, sometimes most students will go for m squared minus 25, which is not correct. Remember, it's double brackets. So expand the brackets out, we get m squared minus 5m plus 25. Then merging these two things together, we get a final answer of m squared minus 10m plus 25. Now if you got straight to the answer and you got it correct, you would get 2 marks. You don't need to show necessarily this line. But again, if you were to mess up your final answer, then maybe recognizing that it's double brackets and that proper expansion line where it hasn't been simplified would get you the 1 mark. Moving on to question 5, it says expand and simplify. So again, recognizing that this is a double bracket question. So then we've got x squared plus 16x plus 64. Then for question 6, it says factorise fully, and then here we've got x squared minus 49. So this is a difference of 2 squares. So I set up my 2 brackets. What do I square to get x squared? Well, that's going to be x. What do I square to get 49? 7. One's a plus, one's a minus. Question 7, it says factorise fully 6x cubed minus 15x. So factorise fully will always be an indication that you can factorise this, but there's going to be more than one possible answer. So again, you want to make sure that you are using the highest common factor of the numbers and the lowest power of the letters. So here, the biggest number that goes into 6 and 15 is going to be 3. And both terms have got x. So here we've got 2x minus 5. Now what would be worth 1 mark is if I just took the x out. So if I just took x and factorise this, then what I would end up with is, actually that shouldn't be an x there, it should just be 15. So that would get me 1 mark if I wrote that. So however, this would be worth 2 marks. So then moving on to question 8, it says expand and simplify. So here we've got more additional double bracket questions. So again, 2x times 3x is 6x squared. 2x times minus 4 is minus 8x. And then we've got 7 times 3x, which is plus 21x. And 7 times 4, which is minus 28. Again, make sure you're careful with your signs, knowing that 2 positives make a positive, 2 negatives make a positive, but a difference of signs gives you a negative. So we get a final answer of 6x squared, and it's going to be plus 13x minus 28. Moving on to question 9, it says factorise. So again, we're looking for 2 numbers that multiply together give you 12, added together give you minus 8. And so those 2 numbers there are going to be x minus 6 and x minus 2. Question 10, expand and fully simplify. So again, we've got 6x minus, and that's going to be 27, minus 5x minus 10. So again, collecting all the like terms, we get x minus 37. Question 11, it says expand and fully simplify. So again, got quite an expensive inexpensive, a complicated expression here because we've got an x squared inside one of the brackets. So again, take your time with this. So 2x squared times 3x is 6x cubed. Then we've got plus 14x squared. Then we're going to have 3 times 3x, which is 9x, and 3 times 7, which is 21. We then got to take away. Now again, be careful of the minus. So 4x squared, 4x times x squared is 4x cubed. And then we've got 4x times minus 5, which is minus 20x. So then taking away the bracket, remember there's a minus 1 there, so what we get is 6x cubed plus 14x squared plus 9x plus 21 minus 4x cubed plus 20x. So then simplifying all of this, collecting the x cubes, we get 2x cubed, then joining the x squared, so we've already got 14, so that's going to be plus 14x squared. Then joining the x's, I get 29x, and then the constant, which is 21. And again, 4 marks, very generous, should be relatively straightforward, but again, very easy to make that mistake, particularly with this negative here. So just be mindful of that. Moving on to question 12, it says factorize. So here we want to factorize this fully. And again, depending on your method that you choose, you can do this mentally or you can use the magic number way. And again, if you're not sure about how to factorize this properly, then I strongly recommend you watch the video that goes through that in more detail. But the final answer should be 7x minus 3 and x plus 2. Now if I just quickly go through the magic number way, because it always works, so 7 times minus 6 is going to be minus 42. So I'm looking for two numbers that multiply together to equal 42, but added together give me positive 11. So here for 42 we're looking at 21 and 2, so that's not going to work. We're looking for 6 and 7, that's not going to work. We're looking for what else goes into 42? We're looking at 3 and 14. That does, yeah, that seems to be the winner. So here we've got our two numbers being, now because the 11x is positive, so we're looking for a positive big number, so it's plus 14 minus 3. So then sticking those numbers in, I get 7x squared plus 14x minus 3x minus 6. Then factorizing the pairs, I get 7x and then x plus 2. And then factorizing this, I get minus 3x plus 2. And then from there, 7x goes there, the minus 3 is there, and the common bracket is there. Moving on to question 13. It says factorize fully. So this again is a dots question. Difference of two squares. So what, if I set my double bracket, so what squared gives us 225? Well, that's going to be 15. And what squared gives us 9x squared? Well, that's going to be 3x. And again, one's a plus, one's a minus, doesn't matter which one goes first. Then moving on to question 14, it says factorize x squared minus y squared. So again, recognizing that this is a difference of two squares. So I have x plus y, x minus y. Then says for question 14b, use your answer to work out 92 squared minus 8 squared. Now this, it does say use your answer, so I have to use factorize. I can't just work out what 92 squared is and what 8 squared is and then take away the two answers. I need to use the algebraic terms expression in part A to answer this question. Now in this particular question, if I compare that to x squared minus y squared, then here x equals 92 and y equals 8. So then if I then substitute these two things into my answer for part A, then what I end up with is 92 plus 8 multiplied by 92 minus 8. Now this bracket is going to give me 100 and this bracket is going to give me 84 rather. So then all that's left for me to do is do 100 times 84, which gives me an answer of 8,400. And there is my final answer for this particular question.